It was a religious call to arms as progressive faith leaders joined forces at a D.C. church to call attention to President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet and staff picks that threaten all minorities in America. One attending rabbi said what led to Trump's victory was a, quote, tectonic shift that we didn't see coming. The group of religious leaders included Muslims, Christians, and Jews. They asked Congress not to accommodate appointments that threaten people of color, immigrants, and religious minorities, and to be patriots before partisans.
Was vulgarity unbound that used racism, classism, and xenophobia to keep open a psychic wound that exists at the heart of America. You have to find a way to have a movement that does not use the puny language of left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, but ask three simple questions. Are these policies and these appointments morally defensible, constitutionally consistent, and economically sane? And you must begin to fight day one.
Joining us in the studio is Jim Wallace, founding president of Sojourners. He also is the author of the book, America's Original Sin, Racism, White Privilege, and the Bridge to a New America. Reverend Jennifer Butler, founding CEO of Faith in Public Life. Also joining us on the phone is Reverend William Lamar, the pastor of the Metropolitan AME Church here in D.C. When you talk about your criticism of the picks, who really stands out the most?
Senator Jeff Sessions is one that we're very concerned about. His discussion is going to come up on January 10th. He has a terrible civil rights record, and he is very close to white nationalist groups and takes up a lot of their policies. When the when the Voting Rights Act was repealed, he celebrated. And he is up for U.S. Attorney General. He is supposed to be the people's lawyer. And he does not represent all Americans.
Jim?
You're hearing cabinet appointments talked about in people's kitchens and living rooms because people are feeling threatened by these appointments. So Donald Trump ran, we all know, on religious bigotry. But an appointment like Sessions says, we're going to make this structural. I was serious about this. I'm going to make this structural now. So structurally, racism now is embedded in this new administration because of these appointments.
Reverend Lamar?
Yes, sir. I do agree that Sessions is definitely someone that we need to fight vigorously against. And I think also that the election of Donald Trump does not signal something new within American history or American politics. It signals a retrenchment. It signals many of our white brothers and sisters and evangelical brothers and sisters not willing to accommodate a new America demographically, culturally, racially, and religiously, and people trying to hold on to power instead of sharing in the interest of broader community. And I think that we need to be aware that this, again, is not an anomaly, but it's profoundly American, and Americans in many generations have had to fight this, and we must fight it in our own day.
And when we talk about picks, I mean, obviously, each president gets to make their own choices. But when you talk about Sessions, that's the Department of Justice. And you're talking about massive focus on civil rights. A former AG, Eric Holder, said that when he came into the AG's office, the Civil Rights Division was in tatters after 8 years of President George W. Bush. And so many folks are quite fearful that you're not going to see the same diligence, if you will, that we've seen the last 8 years when it comes to police departments, when it comes to accountability under Jeff Sessions.
Well, not just diligence. I would say you were talking about North Carolina, where there's a surgical focus on disenfranchising black voters. Instead of Washington overlooking that, you're going to see Washington now collaborating, coordinating voter suppression nationally. Brian Stevenson once said, slavery never ended, it just evolved. And this is now the new evolution of slavery. That's what this really is. And so Washington can't be looked to now by civil rights leaders for accountability, but rather there's no help coming from Washington. So that means local clergy are going to have to say to local police departments, we are here to watch you and monitor you and film you. And I think what we're against now has to grow to what we're going to do. So when they try to arrest undocumented immigrants, we're going to make them arrest them in our churches, in our seminaries, not just at home alone. We're going to hold local police accountable by local clergy. And when they try to register Muslims, we're going to say, we're going to be first in line as priests and rabbis. So I announced yesterday a Matthew 25 pledge, you know that text. How you treat the vulnerable is how you treat me, says Jesus. So around the country, you'll see multiracial clergy groups taking that pledge. And my brother's right. White evangelicals in this election were more white than evangelical. And that's really what's been happening for a long time.
That's right. 2,500 clergy signed on to the letter opposing this cabinet of bigotry. And we also want to see Republicans in particular speaking out vociferously about Steve Bannon. We now have a white nationalist in the White House as the key advisor to the president, and we need to hear people speaking out and having some moral spine about that. This is rolling back years and years and decades of civil rights history, and we can't let that happen. Clergy are already preparing now to put themselves on the line. We see what's coming, and we will not stand for it.
Reverend Lamar, go ahead, your final comment.
Yeah, I was going to say a new slavery requires a new abolition. It requires persons to connect across theological perspectives and racial perspectives. And I think also to deny the great man theory of history, all of the wonderful things that have happened in this nation to move the needle toward justice. It did not happen first in the halls of power amongst policymakers and elected politicians. They were forced to do what was right by people out in the nation who demanded justice. And I think that we have never acquiesced our leadership and power to those whom we elect, but we force them, we push them, we direct them to do what is in the best interest of those whom the Lord will call the least and the last and the lost. And I think that we don't have voiceless people, but we have people whose voices must be amplified by those of us who have forums such as yours and such as ours. And I'm ready for the fight. The hope during these days is in the fight, and we're ready to fight.
And resistance can deepen your faith. Resistance can deepen our faith, as my brother is saying. It's time for a fight.
All right, Reverend Lamar, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Jim, thank you very much as well. Pastor, thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.